Hey everybody, welcome to today's video after a long time. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting solution. So we will be building up a highly scalable serverless application that can back up your databases at your will. So before we move forward, this is going to be a very hands-on lab. Quickly we will be going through the design, high-level design, and what are the advantages and features that we get out of it, and then we would be moving into the implementation. So without wasting any further time, let's quickly dive in. So let's quickly talk around like why it was needed, what was the motivation. So for a long time I have been using A2 hosting, which is like very reliable, had been very reliable hosting solution for my website, and it has worked so well in the last, I don't know, 5-7 years or so, but there was no problem. But a problem started in somewhere in 2019, I guess, when there was a ransomware attack and all the Windows servers were like attacked. It was down for about 2 months or so, what I recall. And for that amount of time, it was like totally helpless. I couldn't do anything. There's nothing that I could do on that part. The problem was I have been doing backups. I have used like backup that is provided by the hosting panel, but all those backups were like hosted on the same file storage, which were all logged out due to the ransomware attack. So that led me to think like what could I do so that this problem doesn't happen. Now I couldn't directly move to like these AWS or GCP for my personal projects or personal website. Reason being like they come out to be too costly for that. So I just want to have a shared sort of hosting that can run my blog or something like that very easily without like without like spending a lot of fortune in terms of costing and those aspects. So that's why I like started exploring the solutions for that. There seems to be a couple of third-party solutions that actually does the job. They can back up the WordPress databases or around that, but they were like too costly. Again, this is not a business website, this is a personal blog. I don't want to spend too much on that part in terms of maintainability. I know like to keep it up, I know like to keep it operational there would be some sort of cost going in, but I just want it to be reasonable, not too high, not too low, somewhere around that. So that was the one of the reason, the primary reason like why I started looking in was the backup location. So that's the with A2 hosting as well. I had the backups, but those backups were like hosted within the same server. They were not offsite, offshore, somewhere else. So that was another major problem. I wanted to have a sort of a DR type scenario, production grade DR type scenario that can work out pretty well for my personal blog as well. So let's quickly dive into the design aspects, how it was done. So basically Lambda, if you see over here, Lambda is the core component that takes care of almost everything, all the aspects when it should run, doing the actual processing on those aspects. And the way I planned it out, because you need to have certain sort of libraries already there in your runtime. Those are like MySQL dump, and those tools should already be installed. For that reason, I took an alternate route. So the base executable code that's in Python. Now I used a Docker to like pack it into a Docker image that is like pushed to our ECR. Now from the ECR we are deploying the Lambda image. Now once the Lambda is deployed, you need to think like how it is going to be executed or how it is going to be triggered. For those we are using cron jobs, as in my case. Also have a webhooks for that, which I can trigger like whenever I'm doing an update. Before that I can have a manual backup of my database, and apart from that you can also have your SQS or SNS implementations topics, and so all those can be like very easily integrated with your Lambda. Now once the Lambda is there, it gets triggered. Now what it does, it goes to your MySQL or mariadb, whatever be the case. It goes to the database, execute the script, gets the dump, gets the SQL file. Now once the backup is done, we have the backup file, we compress the file and store it to our S3 location, S3 bucket. From there, now once this is done, we need to have some sort of a notification. So regardless of a case, whether it succeeded or it failed, what we do is like we push out a notification. Now that notification goes to your success or your failure topics, on the basis of which you can like trigger any sort of notification you want. I am right now using email for that. You can use email, SMS, app push, whatever you want, you can do. Now see, this seems to be a very simple solution, but this works very efficiently. I have been using it for about a year or so, and you can almost use it to any of the database. It is not related to MySQL or MariaDB. Basically the approach more or less remains same, and with the same approach you can like target SQL, Postgres, Mongo, whatever you want. You can have a backup for those databases, or not just databases backup, but anything you want, you can do that with our notifications for that. So now before jumping into the actual implementation, I will just take one more minute. Let's quickly see like what are the high level features that we get from this architecture. Apart from high scalability, availability, we get a lot of these features. So first of all, we have all the control over the flow. So generally, like what happens if you use third-party servers or solutions, you don't know how they are actually implementing. You have to trust their code, their part. Now here what is happening is like you have the complete control how the code is flown, how the databases and how the backups and databases are generated. You have all the control. You are not dependent on any third-party libraries. Now most of the hosting providers, shared hosting providers, whether it is GoDaddy, Namecheap, A2 hosting, regardless of what, so they do support these backup options, but what I have seen is like it is not that much efficient, and especially with the case like I was stuck with A2 hosting for about a month and a half, or even I don't recall now, about 2 months. So I had no choice. So you're not dependent on the hosting provider. You have a perfect off-site backup recovery. So code is something that you definitely have. Now let's say for whatever reason, if your site fails out, your provider is offline, you can just go to another provider and like put up your database and you're up in no time. Of course it takes some time, but again in no time you would be up and running. Now again, the costing aspect, like which is for especially so for our enterprise customers, it doesn't matter like what's the costing. They are like good to pay for that because that's their sort of bread and butter. But for a smaller or cheaper projects, this approach is almost free. I don't recall like paying a couple of pennies for the storage, that too like including all of the other services that I am using. So that is like almost free to use. Lambda is something that is like a lot of invocations are already available for you. You don't have to pay for that. Now the next aspect is like it is highly scalable. Now I am using it for a very limited scenario, but you can use it, deploy it to almost any sort of an implementation around. You can do that part, and that works out pretty well. Okay, the next thing is like this is highly flexible. You can the way you want to trigger, you can have your cron jobs. Let's say you are building up some deployment pipelines, and before the deployment actually happens, you want to have a backup for your database. So you can have a webhooks. You can either like do it using an API gateway, or you can also use your functions URL, which are a new feature. You can also use that to basically create a webhook. Now these webhooks can be called upon directly from your pipelines, your workflows. So you can directly call these and like have the dump being created. Also you can have your SQS or SNS triggers. That is like no limit for that. You can like use any of those limits. Crons is the most useful case. So like I have it around 1 or 3 a.m. in the night. That is what I have scheduled upon, and I do get all the emails notifications for that. Prompt notifications, you need to know whether your database was like backed up or not. There was some problem. So yes, you do that, those prompt notification all together. Let's move from the theory. Let's move into the implementation. All right. So this is our very simple 26 lines, including line breaks Python code that does everything. So let's just quickly dive in and see like what we are doing over here. So we have some imports over here. That's fine. Then we are defining the S3 bucket that we actually want to use. Now this is the location where we are going to dump our database files. Now I am right now dumping at the root. If you want to like have some folder structure, that is something that you can always build, which we'll see in a moment. Then we are going to use some of the environment variables to fetch the DB host name, database name, username, password. We will access those. We are doing some prints. Now again, these are optional. You can control all of these aspects, what you want, how much you want to dump into the database. Then we build up our command. The command is MySQL dump, then the host name, user, password that goes over here. We are pipelining that into a gun zip, so we will zip that and compress it, and then again we pipeline that and push it to AWS S3 with the bucket name that we have. Now look at the parameters. We are using database host, user, password, database name. That's fine. And then the bucket name goes over here, the first parameter. Then we have the file name, which is created using database name underscore the timestamp. Okay, and the timestamp we are using this function with these parameters to like a YYMMDD sort of thing over there. That's it, nothing else. Then we are just using the subprocess.popen to like create an external process, fire it up, and once done we just print backup finished and done. This is the very simplest form of the MySQL database backup that you can do. If you are using any of the other database engines, you can just optimize this command over here to like actually do whatever the part you want to do. Now the main magic that actually happens in the Docker part. The reason being, we need to have these binaries being installed to be able to run them, and what we are doing over here is like we are executing an external process out of this Python script. So that happens via the Docker. Let's quickly see that as well. Now again, we are using a Python Slim Buster. That's the base image that we are using, and we are doing some of these installations with the apt within the Docker image, within the within the Docker build. So we are using G++, mate, cmake, unzip, libcurl, OpenSSL. So we are using some of these libraries, and then we are also using AWS Lambda RIC. So this file is required for execution from the Lambda when the pipeline like Lambda triggers the Python function, and then we are using the pip3 to install the AWS CLI. This is needed for your S3 connection. For that we are using the AWS CLI. Now once all that is done, we are using some of these functions to like actually have the mariadb client installation and cleaning and auto removing all the additional library. That's it. Once that is done, we set the work dir. Entry point is set to AWS Lambda RIC, and we have the entry point as main.backup. That's it. So once this Docker file builds up, it has all the ingredients to actually fire up. Now we will quickly move to the AWS console and see like how to deploy it end to end. Let's quickly do that. I'll fire up my AWS console over here, and if you see, so like I have this account over here and logged in as an administrator access. Now for the sake of this demo, I would be having some of these privileges as admin access, but again from a production deployment or how you want to control that, you should ideally follow the principle of least privilege and have a limited set of permissions for your users. So let's quickly dive in. So first of all, I'll create an IAM user that we are going to use, because we need to push these Docker image from my machine to Docker. For that I need to have a IAM user which will actually do that. So let's just quickly create that, and the process is pretty simple. Just click on add user over here. You need to create a user. I'll just call it temp user, and please you can try all you want. I would be removing these credentials after this demo, so it won't work out for you. Okay, programmatic access, we don't want anything. I just wanted to attach an existing policy, admin policy. Again, for the sake of this demo, in your production system, don't do that. Have a proper policies being defined and added, like what you want to do that. We do that, and we get our secret access key and a secret key. Let's quickly update that. Now also one more thing is like what I'm doing over here, I have a file that actually updates my environment variable. I generally shuffle around these credentials a lot, so I have created a common file. Let me just quickly show that to you. So if you see over here, this is my file. I just set out a few environment variables. I quickly do that in front of you. Okay, this is my key, this is my secret, and I want to use my AP South one. I'll just update this file. Now let me open my command prompt and bring it in. Let me see like if I can increase the font size. Okay, let's do that. Let's fire AWS CRED, and that should set. Let's just validate it. AWS STS get dollar. This should be temp user as we get. Let's just see. Okay, we are up and running. Now let's quickly go into our ECR because we want to push a Docker image. How we are going to do that? Okay, ECR. What did I click? All right, here's my ECR container registry. I'll go to the private registry over here, and I need to create a repository where I need to push my Docker image. So let's just quickly do that. Repositories. This is some other repository I don't want to use right now. Let's create a private repository. All right, I don't want to use any of the other properties or need to change attributes. I'll just use the default one, and let's just open that. Now once how to publish your ECR, there's a special set of commands that you need to do, and how you're going to do that is like it's pretty straightforward. You need to use this view push command, which actually gives you all the commands that are required to like actually log in. All right, so the Docker is running. So let's just quickly fire the commands, and we will be firing these commands one by one. Now, one thing that I have noticed is like I am using Windows 11, and there's a different set of commands that it shows. I think these are for PowerShell. For me, the default set of commands work pretty well, and the only thing that I am having is I'm having the AWS CLI installed. So I'll just quickly hit the command over here, and let's see. It should succeed the login. Okay, yep, login succeeded. I have that. Now we need to build our image and tag it. Let's quickly do that. It's a local tag that we will do for now. And the important thing is like AWS by default, it gives you all the commands. You don't need to like go into documentation, scan around, search around, like what are the files, what are the commands that you need to build for pushing your image. It gives you everything. If you have your Docker file in correct order, you should be able to continue with that. All right, let's wait for a minute till the image actually build up. All right, so we have our Docker image built up with a local tag of MySQL backup. Now we need to tag it with the ECR registry name. Let's just quickly do that. Again, just copy and paste. Nothing have to do specific around that. This is done. And the last step for my local machine is to actually hit and do it. All right, so it should be able to push it pretty fast. Just a couple of minutes. All right, so my Lambda image is pushed now, and we can just quickly validate that. I'll just do a refresh over here. My image is here, it is reflecting over here. Let's quickly create a Lambda now that will use this image to actually run. So I'll go to Lambda. Come on man, open. So Lambda is here. We create a function. In the function, we use container image. This is important. We select that, and we call it MySQL backup, or you can call it whatever you want. That actually should not be a problem. Once done that, you can put a image URI from your repository, or you can also browse that. I have only one. I'll do that. This is selected. I'll select my image over here. Now once this is done, you can nothing else you need to change over here. Just call create function. It will take a minute to actually pull the image and actually set up, and then you are done. Let's wait while the time it deploys. So if you see over here, Lambda is deployed, but we need to do a couple of configuration over here before Lambda is actually usable. And how we are going to do that is like first thing is we need to have a S3 bucket where the dumps would be created. And the other thing is like we need to give our Lambda permission to actually write to that S3 bucket. So I'll just quickly go into configuration and go to the permission set to open the execution role. Now once the execution role opens up, let me also open the buckets as well in parallel. Let's open a new tab basically. Okay, let's create a new bucket. So I'm just using a random name over here, nothing else. It's a private bucket, don't need to do anything, don't need to enable, disable anything, just using the defaults over here. And let's open that. Okay, the bucket is here. We will be needing the ARN in a moment. This is our policy. Let's add an inline policy. You can also have a static policy that you can use. We are going to use an inline policy for now. And the service that we want to use is S3. Let it load. Okay, S3. And the actions, we need to have a list bucket. That is one policy that we need to know have. And then we need to have a put bucket and put bucket. Yeah, these two are the policies that I generally use, bare minimum, nothing specific. And then we move to the next step, and here we are going to need the ARN. ARN is available right over here. Just copy it, go back, add ARN. Okay, we have the ARN being set up, that was fine. And here also we put in the ARN along with any. So we want to allow access to any of the objects in that. And we just give a review policy, give it a name. And this is like the good example of least privilege. We don't want to do everything with that. Once this is done, our Lambda is completely able to write that. Now the next part of it is actually configuring the Lambda with the environment variables that we have earlier seen. So that is also pretty easy. We can go over here, you can click on add it, and I'll just quickly add these environment variables and back in a moment. Alright, I have added these environment variables over here, which you can see, right? And again, I'm using this dummy MySQL database. Please don't try your luck. Would be deleting this after this demo. I have actually seen got a few notifications earlier from the system, like somebody is trying to use these credentials which are invalid. It gives a false positive. So this is a database. If you see, it has a few databases, tables, and quite a good amount of data. For example, if I go to view detail for this order details, you would see a lot of these data over here, rows. So yep, this is a good amount of data that we have. Let's just minimize this. The function is deployed, and now it's time to test out, do the actual test. Does it work? Does it not? Let's just quickly see. Before we do that, one more thing actually. So what we need to do is, like, sometimes during the startup or during the execution as well, the Lambda could take quite a good amount of time for that. And the default timeout that is set is 3 seconds. We don't want that. We want to increase that. So for this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase it to 15 seconds. Okay, that should be fine. Let's change it to 15 seconds and wait for the Lambda to deploy. It will again take a moment for it to deploy, and once done, we would be good to test it out. Alright, so our Lambda is now deployed, and we have used the time of 15 seconds. Again, that will change based on your requirement, how you're using that. Now we are going to do our first test, and let's see. The bucket is right now empty, nothing over here. And let's try to see and fire test. Again, this is the first start, so it is going to take some amount of time for a cold start function to happen. What I've seen in my earlier one, it takes around 8 to 10 seconds for the first one. And if you execute it incrementally, it works quite fast. Okay, it is done successfully. And if we see what is the function started, MySQL backup finished, that's good. We have a build duration of 14,360. Oh, just on the margin. And let's try to hit it again and see then how it works out. I think it should be faster the setting time. Let's just validate the hypothesis. Alright, so if you see again, it is now 9 seconds, somewhere around 9 seconds that it has taken for a build duration. Alright, this is cool. Now let's see, time for result for the curtain to be raised, and we have our backup file straight right here. So this is around 55 KB, which is a compressed image. If you download it, decompress it, it will be around 256 TB, which is the size of my original database. Now this is done, the Lambda is working, but how are you going to like run it for like okay, the Lambda is working, but you want it to run at specific times, right? You want to do that. So what we can do is we can go to add trigger, and here you can select event bridge, CloudWatch events, and we can, do I have a rule? Yes, I have a rule. And so you can create a new rule over here. Let's just copy the pattern, and I can like actually do that. Okay, create a new rule. Let's call it E2am something, whatever, run at 2 a.m. daily, and we need to pass in the CRON expression over here. So this is a very good documentation. The link is right over here. You can quickly go through, like if you want to understand what are the different options available, how you want to do that. So if you see the cron and then the fields, now what are the fields over here, what the meaning that they have, what are the wildcards supported over here, all those are like defined quite in detail with some examples over here. For example, this says like this runs at 12 p.m. every time. Okay, so all of those are like defined, pretty good documentation, at least on this part. And I want to run it at 2 a.m. so I'll change it to 2 and then create add, and that should be pretty much it, right? It should be able to do that. If you want to do a function URL, that is also one of the options. You can just go over here, create a function URL, and let me just quickly showcase you. No, I don't want to have a course right now, and just going to say save, and it will create this URL. It will take a moment to actually reflect it. I think this is done. Now, if we hit this URL, we should see the same execution that we have seen when we hit it manually. It should show me some result, and it says backup finished. Let's quickly validate that. Now we have the second one that we have just executed. So it's 21:10:18, which is just a moment back. Okay, so the database is working pretty fine. This case is working. Now this URL, it can include authentication. It can include the IAM authentication, not the other one. If you're using any of the JOT or other authentication, OAuth, OIDC, whatever. So in that case, you have to do that manually, or rather pass it via API gateway. But if you're using directly, you can if you're using the IAM authentication, you can pass in from a data pipeline or any of the workflow for it to be generated. Now, once that is done, we can also add a destination. And here you can see like different conditions. We can have a SNS or an SQS invocation, and you can just define it over here. If we say SNS, then on success, on failure, we can choose. Right now there are no items. I need to create those topics, and then once that is done, I can have those like delivered directly to me. Right now what I have done is I have been using email for that, as an email as a target. All right, with the SNS you can have you can use the SNS topic, and within the SNS you can have different subscriptions on your email, and whatever be the result, you can add for both the conditions, on success, on failures, and it will just send you the complete details on your mail. So that works out. So with that, we conclude the current demo. But again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of these things. And if you want to actually grab the code, all the code is available on GitHub. The link is in the description. You can go over there. You can see it out. All the what are the architecture we are using. Then again, different setup steps, different environment variable that we want to use, and some sort of future optimizations that I think could be handy depending upon use case, like using secrets manager. If you want to pull the dumps for all the databases, we can actually iterate through the databases, or like put it in a comma separated, something that we can do. So these are different options that you can sort of integrate, be flexible, use it, be creative. So all those are available for you, what you can do. So guys, with this we conclude today's video. I hope you liked it. If you have any queries, any suggestions, you want to chat, whatever, you can just put it in the comments. I'll try to answer most of the comments that I get, whatever the queries or something. And if you like the content, please do subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to get updates on the upcoming videos. So please do subscribe to the channel. I hope you liked the video. Have a very great day. See you next time.